The ocean was supposed to be the safest part of the trip. Luxury cabins, bright lights, music, thousands of passengers. But somewhere between the parties, the cameras, and the endless black water outside the ship, a young woman disappeared. And when investigators finally understood what happened inside that cabin, people across the internet began asking the same terrifying question. How could someone die on a crowded cruise ship while surrounded by people? Because this case was never only about murder. It was about silence, about isolation in the middle of thousands, about the terrifying reality that sometimes the most dangerous place is not an abandoned street, but a room floating in the middle of the ocean. The girl boarded the ship expecting freedom, photos, friends, late-night music, the kind of trip people remember forever. And in a way, that is exactly what happened. People did remember it forever, just not for the reasons anyone expected. At first, nothing looked unusual. Passengers described the atmosphere as normal. Loud music, alcohol, crowded hallways, young people moving between cabins late into the night. The kind of environment where time disappears easily. And that detail matters, because confusion protects timelines. The noisier an environment becomes, the easier it is for danger to move unnoticed. That night, the girl was reportedly seen laughing with friends hours before everything changed. No visible fear, no sign she believed she was in danger. No indication the night was moving toward violence. But sometime after midnight, the atmosphere shifted. And according to investigators, the most important part of the entire case happened inside a very small window of time. One cabin, one hallway, a few missing minutes. That was all it took. At first, people assumed she simply left the room. Maybe she went upstairs. Maybe she walked the deck. Maybe she met someone. Cruise ships are confusing environments, endless hallways, multiple levels, thousands of strangers. People disappear into crowds constantly. But then hours passed. No phone activity, no confirmed sightings, no return to the cabin. And slowly, concern began replacing confusion. Friends reportedly tried contacting her repeatedly. Nothing. Staff members initially believed it might be a normal passenger issue, until investigators started reconstructing the final timeline. That is when the case became disturbing. Because according to reports, the last known movements connected to the victim did not point toward the outside of the ship. They pointed back toward the cabin itself. And once investigators focused
on the room, the story changed completely. One of the reasons this case spread so aggressively online is because cruise ships create a psychological illusion of safety. People think thousands of people are nearby. Cameras are everywhere. Security exists. But large environments create blind spots, especially at night, especially during parties, especially when people stop paying attention. And according to investigators, someone may have used exactly that chaos to their advantage. The victim's final known hours became the center of the investigation. Who saw her last? Who entered the cabin? Who left it? How long was she alone? Those questions sound simple, but in major investigations, timelines are everything. And in this case, the timeline became terrifyingly narrow. Investigators discovered inconsistencies almost immediately. Witnesses remembered different times, different movements, different conversations. Some details aligned perfectly. Others completely contradicted each other. That is where suspicion begins growing. Because when reality is clear, timelines usually stabilize. But when people hide truth, timelines fracture. Then another disturbing detail emerged. Some passengers reportedly heard unusual sounds coming from nearby cabins during the night. Not loud screaming, not obvious violence, just strange movement, short noises, sudden silence afterward. And silence is important, because many real crimes are quieter than people imagine. Movies teach audiences to expect dramatic chaos. Real violence often happens differently, fast, confusing, contained, especially in enclosed environments, especially where offenders fear attracting attention. Investigators eventually focused heavily on the physical evidence inside the room. Signs of struggle reportedly existed, objects displaced, small details suggesting panic occurred briefly, but intensely. That changed everything, because now the case no longer resembled a disappearance. It resembled confrontation. And confrontation inside a cruise ship cabin creates terrifying implications. Limited exits, thin walls, tiny spaces, which means if violence happened there, someone likely believed they could control it quickly. That possibility disturbed investigators immediately, because control changes the psychological profile of a crime. Impulsive violence leaves chaos. Controlled violence minimizes it. And according to many reports surrounding the case, the scene appeared frighteningly contained considering what allegedly occurred. That led investigators toward darker questions. Did the offender know the victim personally? Was this planned? Or did an ordinary interaction suddenly become deadly? Those possibilities matter because motive changes behavior. Random offenders behave differently than emotionally connected offenders. Emotion creates mistakes, panic, overreaction. But calm behavior suggests something else entirely.
Delay, alternative explanations, missing time. Those elements protect offenders longer than people realize. Meanwhile, the internet exploded with theories. Cruise ship crimes create massive public fascination because they feel isolated from normal reality. A floating city surrounded by darkness, limited escape, thousands trapped together while investigators search for truth. It feels cinematic, but the emotional reality is far darker. Because families are forced to wait while ships dock, jurisdictions argue, evidence gets processed slowly, and rumors spread faster than facts. And rumors spread aggressively in this case. Some people believed the victim trusted the wrong person. Others believed multiple passengers knew more than they admitted. Some theories claimed the truth was obvious from the beginning. Others insisted investigators missed critical evidence. But one thing united almost everyone following the case. The timeline did not feel complete. And incomplete timelines create obsession, because the human brain hates gaps. Especially in violent stories, we want sequence. Beginning, middle, end, but unresolved details force people to keep mentally replaying events over and over, searching for missing logic. That is exactly what happened here. The deeper people looked into the final hours before the victim died, the stranger the behavior around her seemed. Why were some witness statements inconsistent? Why did certain movements on the ship remain unclear? Why did key moments appear partially unaccounted for? Those questions intensified public suspicion rapidly. And once suspicion grows online, every detail becomes magnified. A delayed statement becomes suspicious. A missing timestamp becomes suspicious. Even normal emotional reactions start being analyzed as possible deception. This happens in almost every major mystery, because uncertainty transforms audiences into investigators. Meanwhile, actual investigators continued examining physical evidence, key cards, surveillance, phone activity, passenger movement, crew reports. Everything mattered. Cruise ships record enormous amounts of data, but ironically, that volume can complicate investigations. Thousands of people moving constantly, cameras covering some areas while missing others. Passengers entering and leaving spaces continuously. Chaos creates investigative noise, and noise hides important details. One of the most disturbing elements of this case is how ordinary the night reportedly began. That psychological contrast is what keeps people emotionally attached to the story. A normal evening becoming fatal within minutes.
A celebration becoming investigation, music becoming silence. That transformation feels terrifying, because it destroys the illusion that danger always announces itself first. Sometimes danger enters quietly, sometimes it looks friendly, sometimes it waits until isolation appears. And on cruise ships, isolation can exist even inside crowded environments, especially late at night, especially inside private cabins. As investigators pushed deeper into the case, another possibility began haunting online discussions. What if the offender believed the ocean itself would erase evidence? That theory spread because maritime environments complicate investigations enormously. Jurisdiction issues, delayed forensic processing, environmental contamination, limited crime scene stability. People began wondering whether someone exploited those weaknesses intentionally. And once people start believing a crime was calculated, fear changes shape. Now the story no longer feels accidental, it feels predatory. That distinction is psychologically powerful because random violence feels chaotic, predatory violence feels patient, and patient offenders frighten people differently. According to many discussions surrounding the case, investigators reportedly spent enormous effort reconstructing minute-by-minute movement patterns. Who crossed which hallway, which doors opened, which cabins remained active. Tiny details became critical because major investigations often break through microscopic inconsistencies. A wrong timestamp, a forgotten interaction, a witness who remembers something differently months later. Sometimes one tiny contradiction collapses an entire false narrative, and investigators likely understood that from the beginning. Because in enclosed crimes, someone almost always knows more than they initially reveal, especially when escape options are limited. Eventually, public attention shifted toward a central, terrifying question. Could this crime have been prevented? That question appears in nearly every high-profile case involving young victims. Friends replay moments mentally. Families revisit decisions. Viewers imagine alternate outcomes. But hindsight creates false clarity. At the time, nothing may have seemed dangerous at all. That is what makes cases like this emotionally devastating. The warning signs only become visible after tragedy, not before. And once tragedy happens, every earlier moment starts looking different. A conversation suddenly feels suspicious. A glance suddenly feels meaningful. A strange comment suddenly feels threatening. Memory rewrites itself around outcome. Meanwhile, the victim herself slowly risks becoming secondary to the mystery surrounding her. That happens often in viral cases. Audiences become obsessed with solving the puzzle, but behind the theories was still a real person, someone with plans, friends.
Messages unfinished. A future interrupted violently inside a room where she likely believed she was safe. That reality matters, because true crime without humanity becomes entertainment instead of understanding. And this case became more than internet fascination. It became a warning about trust, about isolation, about how quickly ordinary nights can collapse into irreversible tragedy. Even now, people continue debating what truly happened inside that cabin. Was the violence sudden? Was there an argument beforehand? Did someone panic afterward and attempt covering details? Or did the offender remain calm from beginning to end? Those questions still haunt the story, because certainty never fully erased doubt. And unresolved doubt keeps cases alive for years, especially cases involving enclosed environments like cruise ships. Because people imagine themselves there. The narrow hallways, the dark ocean outside, the delayed response time, the feeling that escape is impossible once danger enters the room. That psychological imagery is powerful. It transforms the story from distant crime into personal fear, and maybe that is why people still cannot stop talking about the case. Not because they enjoy tragedy, but because the story destroys a comforting belief. The belief that crowded places automatically mean safety. Sometimes thousands of people can surround someone and still not prevent disaster. Somewhere between the music, the hallways, the locked cabin doors, and the black water outside the ship, a young woman lost her life. And inside those missing nighttime minutes, the full truth may still be hiding.